healthy. A lot can be said for professional grooming. The professional grooming often strips out a lot of that undercoat and will reduce the amount of vacuuming you'll need to do.
What's the treatment for pet anxiety again, Dr. Marshall?
Behavior management and owner management oftentimes. You know, we unwittingly often encourage the behaviors that our pets have. So if you've got an animal that's anxious, and we love to give them all names, but so much of it really is dependent upon the human to get out and exercise them appropriately and make sure that you're not encouraging the behavior. And truly, if you've got an animal with a problem, you need to get help sooner rather than later. And there are some really good behavior folks in town, and every veterinarian has their favorite, but these problems can be at least managed, if not completely cured, but so much of it is the owners have to, number one, admit there's a problem, and number two, admit they're part of it, which is sometimes tough. Question from you, caller. Hi, what's your question, please? Thanks.
Why do dogs eat their own feces?
She cut right to the chase. A, does it happen? B,
oh, yes.
Answer the question. Yeah.
I think there's lots of reasons. It could be boredom. It's something fun to do, unfortunately. And it is a little bit difficult to break dogs of the habit. Rarely, but occasionally there is a medical reason for it. So.
Yeah, there are certain, I know there's certain powders and things that you can sprinkle on their food that will make their feces actually taste bad, so that it'll kind of discourage them from doing it. But it's one of those things that certainly happens.
Yep, and you deal with it, as they say. We may bring on this discussion as a guest, Dr. Vincent, but you've come in contact with dogs that are rescue dogs?
Yes, there are clients. There are people here in West Michigan that work very hard and donate their time to train dogs specifically to help others. There are a few search and rescue groups that have dogs that go to places when there is an emergency and help to find people who are in danger.
Great. We have a question from you. That's what it's all about, caller. What's your question, please?
I'd like to know what's wrong with my cat. She's lost the hair off the back part of her body. Her skin is pink. There's no scales or sores. There's no fleas or anything, but she's losing her hair.
It must be brothers and sister kitties or something, Dr.
It's
Marshall.
the season, unfortunately.
Yeah.
We really do. We see a lot of skin issues this time of year.
Okay.
And again, I go back, one of the first things that we're going to do is rule out flea problems. And you don't always see live fleas, you know, traipsing across the coat. We look for a variety of different things that will indicate to us that there are fleas present. So flea management of fleas is going to be probably a part of what your veterinarian is going to do. But again, we need to have our eyeballs on that cat. It's so hard. I think if you ask the three of us, we could probably give you 20 different possible causes for your cat's itching. But if you put the cat in front of us, we may be able to narrow that down to 5 or 6. And then further narrowing it down is going to take some diagnostics probably. But there are things you can do with your veterinarian trial and error, but you cannot beat your veterinarian taking a peek at the cat.
Great. That's got to be a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, sure. The flea preventatives, you know, again, working with your veterinarian for the flea preventatives. The over-the-counter ones tend to be less effective and sometimes toxic to our pets. So we want to make sure you work with your veterinarian and pick out a flea control that's good for your pet.
You bet. We have a question from you, caller. What's your question, please? Thank you.
Hi, I have a question for Dr. Marshall. She's the best vet in the world, and we have our dog, Rudy. And Rudy is a nervous dog, and he throws up. Sometimes he won't eat for like about a 12-hour period, and then he just throws up bile.
It's real common with anxious dogs. It's real common with some dogs that aren't anxious that just can't handle having an empty stomach. So again, there are as many reasons as the three of us are here for why dogs will vomit. But if you have an otherwise healthy dog who vomits when they have an empty stomach, oftentimes we characterize it as something called bilious vomiting syndrome. We give it a really big name, but all it means is that when you have an empty stomach, those stomach juices kind of work on the lining, irritate it, and they throw up. You can combat that, if that's all it is, by making sure they have a little bit of food in their tummy most times, half a dog biscuit here or there. Some people will actually, with their veterinarian, use something like Pepsid, which can also be helpful. So you want to run it by your veterinarian, make sure it's not going to interact negatively with anything else the dog is on. But certainly dogs that are a little bit anxious tend to have more problems with it.
Follow up, my 16-year-old Jack Russell does seem to be coughing up a little bit more. It's mostly clear fluid after her meal. You know, she's getting old? Okay, that's all I needed to know. We have a question from you, caller. What's your question, please? Hi. Hi, caller. We're ready for your question. You there? Yep.
I have a female cat.
about 4 or 5 years old, but she's been getting urinary tract infections. In fact, she had one in February, in fact, the 6th to be exact, and they said it was cleared up, but here she is acting like she has another one, like she can't urinate, and she came into the living room and stared at me like she did the last time and tried to go in the living room, and I made her go down to her litter box. So she had Vet02, she also had a shot. Why did she keep getting these infections? And now she started to vomit.
Dr. Vincent, Dr. Gardner? Yeah.
Well, she definitely needs to be seen by the veterinarian. You know, usually female cats do not get a urinary blockage, but it's a life-threatening thing when it does happen. Cats get a syndrome called idiopathic cystitis. We don't know 100% of the time why it happens, and some of these cats are better managed with a food change. There's lots of things that can be done to help them.
We're going to be asking the ophthalmologist in a couple of weeks, but is it typical? I mean, is that an aging process that our dogs develop the cataracts? Is that something we should expect if it ages advancing?
We usually see more of what's called nuclear sclerosis, which we'll see a little kind of cloudiness of the eye. You'll notice kind of the blue tinge. Cataracts can often be related to other diseases, so when we see cataracts, we kind of usually look a little further into it, make sure there's nothing like diabetes or anything like that contributing, but we can definitely see eye changes in our older pets.
And there are more and more, I mean, you're all specialists of your own right, but there are more and more orthopedic vets, diabetic specialists.
Well, and we're lucky here in town. We have very good ophthalmologists. So when you talk about ophthalmology, I mean, you guys are probably similar to me. We treat everything. We're first line. Kind of veterinary family medicine is what we call ourselves. But we have Dr. Davidson in town, who is a veterinary ophthalmologist, and that's very nice. The clients are lucky, and we're lucky that we have her to consult with and have her to look over our critters when it goes beyond what we can handle.
Let's talk just with a minute or so left as Cassie tries to take the center stage. One more kind of a bunny 101 as far as why these would make good pets to an appropriate home?
They are quiet, so if you live in an apartment, there's not going to be any barking. They do have a nice long life. You don't need a lot of space for them. And then again, they can be out and about in the house when you're there to watch them.
And what is their litter usually? Not that I'm advocating, you know, have bunnies, but
Oh.
yeah.
You mean litter size?
Yeah.
They'll have lots and lots.
Lots and lots. Okay.
Spay and neuter.
Yes.
Spay and neuter. And in general, with our cats and dogs, spaying and neuter is about what age, Dr. Marshall?
Oh, you know what? Again, it's a variable thing. I still like to make sure that when you take a new puppy in, that you socialize the puppy appropriately, and that you don't. I'm not a huge advocate of people bringing them in and spaying them right away. So certainly before they come into heat for the first time, and certainly before they start having naughty dog behavior. So that 6-month period is still, it's an okay estimate of when to go ahead and do it. If you acquire a pet from any of the rescue organizations, it'll come to you already spayed and neutered, so it makes it easier.
And yeah, I was going to say,
They come
from
all
the
done.
rescue, that come all done, and that's certainly the responsibility. And I trust you also advocate going to our shelters to make this happen, that's for sure. Pets are good for us.
Absolutely. Multiple studies telling us how they decrease our blood pressure and do all these fabulous things for us.
That's all I needed to know. Thanks to each of you. I guess the power of women in veterinary medicine is the way it happens now. Cassie, cheers. Thanks to you, of course, for your calls and questions. Take care to you.